After 20 years of building together through dust, deadlines, and damn good ideas, Pace and Adam invite you to join them for honest conversations about the home building world. Welcome to Build Connected, where experience meets insight, powered by Diamond Home Restoration.
Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Diamond Home Restoration. I'm your host, Adam.
And I'm Pace.
Hey, there he is. Hello, Pace. Welcome to the show.
Hey,
How are
good
you?
to be here.
All right. Well, what episode are we on? I think I ask this every show because I can't count, but you're very good at math, so you're going to be my counter. Where are we at?
Be honest. Have you listened to a single show we've done?
You know, you don't have to be so mean. What do you mean, have I listened to a show? I listen to you talking because I can't stand the sound of my own voice. So when I hear mine, I like speed through it and then I listen to what you have to say. Is that fair?
Okay. It's not fair, but we are on episode 47. Welcome.
Holla. Look at us. All right. Hey, I want to, what? It looks like you wanted to say something. I'm about to get into it. All right, here we go. I'm getting into it. Hey, I want to talk about exterior joist protection. That's what I want to talk about today.
Exciting.
Mainly because we just did it. We have a lot of deck work that we're doing for a project of ours. Building a large deck around a pool that we're redoing. We've talked about this on previous episodes, but we had this pool that was sliding down the hillside. It had separated from the structure because we're on a steep hill and we had to do many concrete piers. And in any case, new deck going around that entire pool. And the deck material is going to be timber deck on top of our framing, which is pressure treated lumber. So Pace, I think we started doing like exterior joist protection maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that.
Nails done, decks done, everything done.
Man, look at you. Pasty white.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's about right. I mean, 20 years ago, we were not putting anything on our deck joists. Less than 10 years ago, I think. So 7, maybe.
Yeah. So it's kind of newish to our industry, right? Even though we're using pressure treated lumber outside, we find that if that pressure treated lumber is sitting outside for a long enough period, it will still break down over time. Especially if you have your deck boards you've got that gap between your deck boards, you've got debris falling from trees and it just collects inside of that gap and it sits right on top of those joists. And over time, it'll cause that pressure treated lumber to rot. So what we do now is we protect the top of the joists by taking a flashing tape. It's usually all black because it's the least obvious material to use when you're looking down when you see the gaps. And that black tape will protect the joists and make them last quite a long time, so you don't get that rot. But there's new kinds of products out there. Maybe they've been around for a few years, maybe even longer. But it's just like a liquid applied membrane, right? So instead of unrolling rolls of tape and peeling the backing off the tape and taking all that time, now we can just pour this liquid applied into a bucket, grab a roller, and just roll the top of the joist, and it's way, way faster. Not only that, whenever we use joist tape and you take the backer off the tape, you got like pieces of garbage kind of flying in the air because guys are just kind of dropping it, and then you don't have to deal with that mess. So we just used the liquid applied actually for the first time on our project that we're using now, and it was great. It was quick. And it seems to really soak into the wood nice and protect it. So only time will tell. But yeah, it's a product that I think we'll continue to use. They make tape dispensers to speed up the taping too now. I've seen that. But yeah, the liquid applied, it's a good way to go.
It's really interesting. The idea of a water trap, right, is the source of so many problems outside the house. Like the first one that you run into is how a deck is attached to your house, right? There's a classic mistake that contractors made years ago, just kind of bolting that ledger directly to the house, and it's a place for water to settle and just lead to rot. I think in the old days when it was done right, there was a piece of Z flashing in there. So any water that made its way down the siding, and hit that Z flashing and it would kick out outside of the ledger and not cause problems. We've moved into a more of a spacer system there, um, kind of solve that problem. But this, what you're talking about, the joist protection is the I think the next step for us, right? It's that little mini trap that's created under or between a deck board and the top of the deck joist. It's just a place for water to sit. Takes longer to dry out. It's just encouragement for rot on that piece of on that joist. So doing whatever you can, creating another layer, just a waterproof layer, to remove that trap, I think is the goal here. And started with the tape, just like you said, and it's moving into a even easier product for us. And I think whenever there's a labor saving step, that's something we want to be looking at because we spend more money on labor than we do on material.
Yeah, I mean, building science and building means have changed, right? You talk about how we used to do, they used to do deck ledgers touching houses. I mean, any scenario where you have two materials that are touching each other, and expose the elements, we want to do away with, right? But decking is one of those things where you have a deck board that is touching a joist, like, so what can you do? And this is a great solution. The tape was a great solution years ago when they came out with that. So we'll
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the touching, right? It's the touching of an organic material. So that water against an organic material, there's something that can grow and feed off the wood, right? Like imagine the day, and quite frankly, you and I have talked about this many times. Moving into an aluminum deck joist, right? Having the composite decking on top of an aluminum joist, there's now no longer need for that deck protection because you have a non-organic material.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to budget, right? When we start getting into that world. I mean, if everybody could have their choice, what you'd go with that aluminum deck joist and you'd go with a composite or a PVC deck board, and that stuff will never ever disintegrate, rot, nothing. So yeah, kind of better best kind of scenario. That would be your best, but you pay for that.
Yeah, it's interesting, like this whole idea, it ties directly into the thing I wanted to talk about, which is something that Detmore talked about recently on his socials. The idea of high end, low end construction, right? Um, the way he framed it is there's this perception from the homeowner's point of view that says depending on the material that's chosen, that really dictates what's high end versus low end. From our perspective, it's much different than that. Really, it's more about I'm gonna use a string of things here: the execution, the preparation, the cleanup, the knowledge, the attention to detail. All of those things separate low end from high end. You can take a very high end sink, let's say sink in this scenario, right? You can put that in, but you can do it in a way that doesn't focus on all of the details around it, whether it's a reveal, how it's set, like how you seal around it, many things. You've taken a high end product and you've created a low end, really, or a less than high end installation. When we think about that, what separates, I think, the work we do from maybe some lower end projects, it comes down to that time spent planning, thinking through the details, all of the preparations that goes into an installation, and then the cleanup at the end of it, right? And then, the going back and double checking those details, doing any cleanup detail work, right? That makes it I don't use the word perfect, but you like using that word perfect, as good as we can, right? That really is the thing that separates the low end versus the high end.
Yeah, I mean, that ties into the first topic I was talking about, even about like the product that we use on deck joists, right? Not a lot of people are doing that. And those are the steps that we take, We like to be thoughtful through all the processes that we do in building. We're thinking about every step. We're thinking about long lasting homes, right? And so I think this is a prime example of executing something that we're thinking about the longevity of, right?
Yeah. Detmore talked about the example he used to make his point was paint. When you're walking around, say, Home Depot, right, and you're looking in the paint aisle, you might see like three grades of paint, and each one will be, more expensive than the next. And I think that idea that the homeowner has is, well, you're moving into the high end when you choose that more expensive paint. But in the painting world, and this is indicative of everything, really, right? When you move into the high end or when you encounter a better paint job, it is about the amount of preparation that goes into the job, right? The amount of cleaning, the amount of taping, the amount of protection that's laid down before any paint can is open. That's what separates a really good job from an okay job. So that's the preparation we talk about. And then once you get to the other side of it, right? You've painted a room, just going back over it. Is there a bristle of a brush somewhere? Right? Isn't there an area that just you might be able to see like where the end of a roller was and there's a line, like just double checking your work, really being focused on the detail. That's what separates a good job. It's that preparation, then a good product, and then the cleanup, kind of the inspection at the other side, right? That really differentiates it. And I think it's similar when we talk about like the way we build, especially when you think about the envelope of a house or these items that we just talked about, like a deck ledger. We're always building redundant systems. So, you might say, well, you put on a building paper, right? And that protects it from the elements. That's your weather resistant barrier. But we're going so far beyond that, right? We are thinking about redundancies and double redundancies. And that separates like the low end from the high end.
Yeah, I think there's so much value in that, right? And I don't know if homeowners they want the value, but do they really want the value? You know what I mean? Do they want to, they need to pinpoint that contractor or builder that that can provide that quality, and you pay for that, right? It costs more money because there is more preparation. There are different techniques, maybe more skilled techniques, right? I mean, there's so many analogies. Anybody can put in a front door, right? But are they going to take the time to do a proper door pan and have it, have the right backstop so water doesn't get into your house? Are they going to do all the necessary steps and not just some basic pan, but something that's made to last and something that they take time on to make it nice and keep the water out properly. So I think these are all important value added things.
Yeah, and it's directly tied to the way you look at things, right? As a builder, you're looking at failure as just a question of time, right? Everything that we do, we are designing it. We know that eventually it's going to fail. And so if you can put a redundant layer behind it, that failure doesn't lead to catastrophe, right? It's buying you time. So in your example, like it's easy to think of, hey, the door assembly is waterproof. Once we put the trim on and we put some caulking on, that's waterproof. Things like the flashing and the pan, right? Those are redundancies, right? You're saying, okay, the door has failed, a seal has failed somewhere, or my caulking has failed. And so now what am I doing? I'm putting in a system behind it that accounts for that failure and it redirects water outside of the house.
Yeah, there needs to be a differentiation between the cost of labor and the cost of material. You know, it's we've harped on this already, but that labor cost, that time that it takes to make something right and take the necessary steps, it's important to us, and I think it's important to a homeowner. So you really need to know who's doing the labor for you and what those steps are.
Well, for me, it's just going back to the point of high end, low end, the separating of what a homeowner thinks versus what we think. Like what
Yeah.
I want to say at the end is like our cost analysis of our projects, material is roughly 30% of a job,
Yeah.
right? In the aggregate, right? Like if you were to look at it like say changing your appliances, right? You might spend 15 grand on appliances, but only $1,000 to install them, right? That's an outlier. Like if you look at the bigger job itself, like the material column is about 30% of the overall column.
Yeah.
And depending on where you live, like we pay our guys $50, Arkansas pays their guys $15 to $18. So that number is going to change drastically, even though they're paying about the same in material. But for us, because we are in the highest paid area, like it just doesn't compare. Like the two are very different.
What does labor mean to a homeowner compared to labor mean to us? For us, we think about all of the steps involved through all the processes of the build. Whereas I think a homeowner just thinks, oh, let's just put this in, right? I mean, they're not living it day to day like we are. So they don't really have as much of an understanding, and by no fault of their own, because this is kind of the world we live in day to day. Whereas, and then you think about material, like material is meaningless to us in a sense. Like we can install anything, high end, low end. It's when it comes down to selections, ultimately it comes down to the homeowner making those choices. I mean, we can make something anybody can make something, like you said, really nice. Something that's really nice and expensive can make it look crappy, right? We can make something that's crappy and look really nice, vice versa.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking about countertops. It's another great example. Like you and I have a countertop fabricator that we've been using for many, many years, 20 years. I don't know, but there have been those odd jobs where we've worked with an outside countertop person. You can spend a ton of money on exotic countertop material, but the install comes down to the skill of that fabricator. Think about the times that we've brought somebody in, and it's usually because a homeowner knew somebody. I'm thinking of two examples, and they don't template, right? They field fabricate. Forget about what you've selected as a material, right? It could be some engineered stuff or it could be super exotic. If you're not controlling your fabrication, right? When you and I walk in and we look at those seams, we run our hands over those seams, man, it's night and day compared to our installer. Like to me, that's a very easy example of high end, low end. Again, doesn't matter what the material is, it's all about that process of templating, shop fabricating, and then micro adjustments in the field once you're installing.
Gosh, you just made me think of a whole new episode for our podcast, which is homeowners wanting to select their own subcontractors.
That's
That's
a great full
yeah,
episode that will be coming guaranteed.
yeah. We'll have to cover that. Um, well, I think we've talked it through. Anything else you want to say about high end, low end?
No, I think that does it. It makes me think of like when we hang up here, I'll be locking in my March Madness bracket. That's a bit of a high end, low end thing. You gotta pull for a few of those upsets. Just picking the right balance, right? That's where it's at. UVM, are they in?
Oh. Um, don't ask me a question I don't know the answer to in front
You
of all
don't
these
know.
people. Embarrassing me.
All right, that's plenty. Thanks, guys, for joining us for another fun episode of Build Connected. I'm Pace.
And I'm Adam.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Build Connected. For more stories, insights, and ideas, visit diamondhomerestoration.com or find us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll be back next week. We hope you will too.